When it comes to haunted places, I've definitely visited a few in my times. 9 times out of 10, I can definitely tell right away from the vibes if somewhere is going to be ooky spooky. There's just like a very unique energy that tends to be in the air. Have you ever been to a disturbingly haunted place before? Let me know in the comments and let's dive into some scary places together. How about we kick off today with a location that's not in the good old US of A for once, the National Film and Sound Archive over in Australia. So Australia's audiovisual archive doesn't sound too spooky right off the bat, but the building it occupies had a darkness-stained history before the film reels and radio tapes moved in about 34 years ago. Give or take. This Canberra icon housed the Australian Institute of Anatomy before 1984, meaning the building collected and stored thousands of body parts, including a stash of human skulls in a downstairs area that today reports high levels of paranormal activity. It is this history of death and dissection that has given it a spooky reputation. The NFSA for short building is regarded by many ghost hunters or paranormal aficionados as not only one of the most haunted in Canberra, but one of the most haunted in all of Australia. The ghosts that are reported in the building stem from the period when it was the Institute of Anatomy. You guessed it, I just wanted to make it obvious. The foyer of the building is lined with 9 busts of famous Australians, including 2 death masks. Sir Colin Mackenzie, the philanthropist who led the whole project, now has his ashes stored in the wall behind a plaque that reads Si Monumentum Requiris Circumspice, which translates as, if you are looking for a monument to me, you are within it. There have been a number of reported sightings of Mackenzie's ghost, which has been described as one of the more extraordinary apparitions. Guests have compared it to a genie coming out of a bottle. So Mackenzie's well-dressed ghostly outline will pop out of the wall near where his ashes are kept, hang out, not move too much, and suddenly get sucked back in like he was never there in the first place. Another one of the more commonly reported ghosties is that of a young girl that would pop out through a grate in the old theaterette and make visiting students laugh. There have also been reports of poltergeist activity, particularly where the dissection laboratories used to be. Since the NFSA moved in, that space has been used as an office with 2 sound recording booths. Quite often, staff would have meetings in that room, and they would hear noises coming from the recording booths, and would see things lying around in there. For example, all the tapes had fallen out of anti-gravity tape decks, which can't happen unless somebody or something had forced them out. Maybe that place might be worth a visit if I ever travel to Australia, as long as all the creepy crawlies and weird animals don't kill me first. Next up, the ghost of the Theban Necropolis. One of the more ancient ghost stories of the world comes from Egypt, around 1200 BC during the Ramesside period. The ancient Egyptians believed in life after death, and in the Book of the Dead, they wrote down a series of spells that they thought would help them reach the afterlife. So in ancient Egypt, ghosts were called Ak, and they were somewhat similar to their former self, and interactions between ghosts and living people were seen in a lesser supernatural way than in modern depictions. The burial city was built at the west bank of the Nile, near the ancient city of Thebes, which at the time was the capital and perhaps even the biggest city in the world. The ruins of the city lie within the modern-day Luxor in Upper Egypt. Don't worry, I promise this is all relevant. So before all of this craziness, there was a man that had to spend the night next to a tomb in the Necropolis, which also that means City of the Dead, by the way, and he was woken by the ghost residing in the tomb. So the next day he went to the high priest of Amun, let me see if I get this right folks, Kon Suambeb, and told him what had happened. So the high priest of Amun took matters into his own hands. He stood on the rooftop, calling to the gods to summon the ghost, invoking the gods of the sky and the gods of the earth, southern, northern, western, eastern, and the gods of the underworld, saying like, send me that august spirit. And it does. I grew and I did not see the rays of the sun. I did not breathe the air, but darkness was before me every day, and no one came to find me. Now, that was what the ghost said, by the way. Now, the guy whose name I've already said asked the name of the ghost. The ghost said, Nubu Semke, son of Ankhmen and of the lady Tamshaz. So how does one please an ancient Egyptian ghost? Our mighty leader offered to rebuild his tomb, making it better with gilded Sisyphus wood coffins to make peace with the ghost. But the ghost was like, I don't trust you and your intentions. So the leader's like, okay, I'll sit down with the ghost. He begins to break down and he shares his unhappy fate. He's like, I will remain here without eating or drinking, without growing old or becoming young. I will not see sunlight, nor will I inhale northerly breezes. But darkness shall be in my sight every day. I will not get up early to depart. So then the ghost is like, okay, I feel bad for you. So he tells him all about his life on earth, how he was an overseer of the treasuries and a military official under Pharaoh Rahotep. So when the ghost died in the 14th regnal year of the Pharaoh Mentuhotep, the ruler gave him a canopic set, an alabaster sarcophagus, and a 10-cubit shaft tomb. But time took over the tomb, and over the centuries, it partially collapsed, allowing wind to reach the burial chamber, which disturbed our ghost. And he's like, other people, other leaders have offered to rebuild this grave, but they never did. Well, this leader was like, I will do it. He also offered to send 10 servants a day to make offerings at the grave. And the ghost was like, that won't be necessary. It all got done, but to this day, people still sense a spirit at that tomb. Creepy. Back to the States we go, with Bethany's home sweet haunted home in Jackson, California, which, that sounds so lovely. The former mining town of Jackson is littered with venues rumored to be haunted, with this one believed to be the most spiritually infested, housing an estimated 15 spirits within its 2,300 square foot interior. What little historical documentation exists suggests that this home was a former brothel, speakeasy, boarding house, and now an Airbnb. It's been through it. Rumors of killings, evidence of lives self-taken, and some unfortunate souls who passed away inside the walls following mining accidents have left each room with its own unique degree of paranormal activity, from footsteps, shadow figures, and hushed voices, to dragging sounds, moving objects, phantom aromas, and fully formed apparitions. Honestly, I want to visit. Who's with me? Come on, Airbnb. Here's another fun one. Reports of ghosties over at the Wilson Castle in Vermont. A castle. This place has been considered haunted since Cornell Wilson bought it in 1939. Wilson never wanted the public to think that the castle was haunted, but according to historians, he had a Catholic priest bless it every spring. So Experts are adamant that nothing evil or demonic ever happened there, but the castle has 6 or 7 frequent flyers that haunt the 32 rooms, and a portal in an upstairs closet that allows for other spirits to flow in and out of the castle as they please. Guests have reported hearing voices in the distance and music being played. Now, get this, the castle is 13,131 square feet with 13 fireplaces. That's a lot of 13s, which allows for different areas of the castle to manifest different hauntings. There have been shadow people under the stairs, and specifically over in the 3rd floor hallway, a figure is known to just pop its head around the corner. And that hallway tends to have a dark energy that spooks the current owners. And the servants' bedrooms are also believed to have a more sinister energy than the rest of the castle. I don't know about you, but that's a lot of energy that's a little weird and a little looky spooky. Alrighty folks, we're ending today with a haunted forest in northwest Ohio. This sighting occurred during the summer of 2018 when Nate Gervais was camping with his brother along Lake Erie near the Pickerel Creek Wildlife Area just west of their home in Sandusky, Ohio. So that first night, the guys went to sleep early because they were so exhausted from a long day of hiking. And been there, not fun. I promise, I do like to hike. Nate woke up at around 2:30 in the morning because nature was calling, but his brother was dead asleep to the world. Thankfully for him, the moon was almost full that night, so it gave off plenty of light for him to see everything outside the tent. There weren't many bushes in the area around the campsite, so Nate wasn't too worried about something just hiding and waiting to sneak up on him. He was walking away from the campsite when he saw something that scared the crap out of him not too far away. What did he see? Well, there was 2 dog-like creatures just standing there staring at him while standing on 2 legs, which, that's a little out of the ordinary. Nate completely freaked out and started running back to the tent. He heard noises that sounded like the creatures were chasing after him and making it's noise he can't understand, he can't describe. Not so much a dog or a wolf sound, but definitely human sounding noises. And he's mentioned this was the scariest thing he's ever heard. It got to the point where he was too afraid to turn around and feared that at any second the creatures would just pounce on him and attack. Thankfully that never happened. So when he finally made it back to the tent, he practically dove into it, and in the process woke up and scared his brother, who was like, "Yo, dude, I was sleeping, what's going on?" So he was like, now, like any non-believer might do, Nate's brother was like, "Okay, pal." He's laughing him off. He's like, "Okay, shut up, I'm going to bed." Nate's response, "Okay, tough guy. If you don't believe me, go outside yourself. Tell me what happens." Oh, bother. So his brother proceeded to leave the tent since nature was calling him, and Nate watched and followed from a distance because he's like, "Well, I'm a little concerned for you." So his eyes took a couple of seconds to adjust because he's like, okay, back, forth, but he could see his brother standing about 20 yards away, staring off at the trees. And he's like, "Well, let's see how this goes." He walks over, all the while looking in the same direction at the pitch black woods. As Nate's eyes adjusted, he could see something in the shadows. Some sort of part dog, part man creature. It didn't move or growl. It just stood there, upright, and was looking at the guys. Now the dog part, the upper half, looks like a German shepherd, but with yellow eyes and a dog-like head. The human part started around mid-torso downwards, and was standing once again on 2 legs like a man. The upper part was hairy like a dog, but the bottom half was hairless, which I'm trying to picture it and it's hurt my brain. Nate whispered to his brother, was like, "What do you think this is?" But his brother couldn't respond because the poor guy was paralyzed with fear and shock. Thankfully, Nate was able to grab him and pulled him back to the tent. So as he ran back, the creature let out a horrific howl, and the sound of that thing echoed through the trees. Once again, it was like nothing Nate had ever heard before, which I don't know about you, but that's terrifying to me, folks. The guys dove into the tent, piled their backpacks and gear in front of the entrance as if it would offer them protection, which it might go without saying, but they were absolutely terrified by this point. It got to a situation where like Nate felt like he was going to throw up, his brother was shaking like a leaf. These guys weren't having it. Then they heard a dog howling in the distance and were like, oh, okay. But it was like, well, what if that was the second creature that they had encountered? And that howl was answered by another howl that sounded like it was right outside the guy's tent, almost as if it had followed them. And this was followed by scratching and digging sounds. And by this time, both guys were screaming, absolutely terrified for their lives. Thankfully, after a while, the noises stopped, leaving behind nothing but silence. And the guys waited and waited and waited, and they're like, okay, you look. No, you look. Nate was the brave one who grabbed the flashlight, opened the flap, and saw nothing out of the ordinary. He looked for quite a while and still nothing. The guys stayed put in the tent until daylight because there was no way that they were going to walk through the dark woods towards the car in an attempt to escape these creatures. After what seemed like forever, the morning light started creeping through the forest canopy, and the brothers slowly exited the tent, looked around, finding large canine and human-like prints all around the campsite, especially in a circle around the tent. They quickly gathered all of their gear and started to hike towards the car, which was parked in a lot about a half-mile away. When they reached the car, the first thing that Nate noticed was a terrible stench, and he couldn't identify it. But it was so strong that the guys smelled it for like a week after it. But they got in the vehicle, drove off. Nate's brother's theory is that the creatures may have found the car and marked it as theirs. Nowadays, the guys still enjoy hiking and camping, they just don't venture into that woods anymore, and they're much more aware of their surroundings. And that brings me to the end of my time once again. I've been Alexa, your resident Ookie Spooky girly, and if you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more disturbing content from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.